So hi everyone, we are October 2027 and this is the K8s Infra meetings. I'm Arno and I will be your host today. So reminder to everyone that this meeting is under the code of conduct. So I will invite everyone to be kind to each other. I see new face in this call. Do you mind if you can introduce yourself? Or we can just skip.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tom Stewart. I just kind of saw everybody at the CNCF KubeCon and thought I'd try and get involved. I just work for a small IoT kind of company that does IoT for industrial manufacturing. We do a lot of Kubernetes on the edge.
Okay, welcome.
Say what?
Welcome.
Yeah, so thank you.
We actually just had a donation from a company, I think it was Cox, that has edge hardware that they're wanting to IoT type stuff. So it might, it obviously needs to be a CNCF project that goes through, but it might be interesting to see what they're offering that might overlap with your skill set to see what things are there. Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Anyone else?
I suppose I'm a new face as well. My name is Joshua Hoplet. I'm a DevOps engineer at Rubin Observatory. I am here so that I do not have to think about buggy IGMP implementations for at least an hour. I've been a Kubernetes user since very early on, about 2015. It's a big part of my daily life. I have been wanting to get involved in the Kubernetes community for years. I've been sort of contributing around the edges. I've contributed to things like the Terraform Kubernetes provider and other stuff around, but I haven't been involved in the central project. And it's a really crying shame that I haven't. So I would really like to engage somewhere. And I think this is actually a really great place for me to get started and sort of build up some relationships with folks. So here I am. How can I help?
Welcome again. So for every new person, I always suggest to basically read the charter because the charter will provide a good guidance for everything we are doing right now and also for the next year. So I put the charter in the chat. Feel free to read and ping me on Slack about some things you don't really understand or how you can basically start to get involved. Okay, so as always, how we do a billing report review. Let me share my screen again. Some issue. Okay, this one. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't see something different about the billing report for this month. I think we can basically quickly go over all the pages. Let me filter. No, October until I think compared to last month, I think compared to the review we did 2 weeks ago, I don't really see a big change in the resource consumption. So anyone have a specific question, or we can directly go to the item in the agenda. Okay, so silence means yes. Okay, so first person is Caleb.
Yes. Is this something that we are still wanting to discuss without Aaron and Tim, or what are your thoughts, Sophie?
I mean, do we need to have a specific conversation? I don't think. I think it's better to just present what you I mean, present your point. I may have some question. This meeting is under the record. Aaron and Tim will check that after and come back with question. Also, I think
Awesome.
Aaron asked for some kind of design docs that basically break down some requirement about the registry. If I remember, I think I see a Slack conversation about this, or an issue about something like that. Okay, so you can just present what you did until now, and we follow up with question.
A quick check on recording. I see the record button may not be going. Just want to make sure that we've.
It is recording. Top
It is. Sorry.
Top left.
All right. I don't know where to look for things, but it seems like it's okay. My big record button is.
Are we also flipped the right way for the rest of everyone here? Can you?
All right. On our side, it makes it mirrory, so it's hard for us to tell if it's right. Do you mind if I share screen or not?
Give me a few minutes.
Sometimes it's a little higher res to come in as a screen share. The Zoom is a funny one.
Okay,
there we
are.
You
go now.
Yeah, give me a second to share, and I'll probably need to reshare to get the right camera angle. Cool. So the background here, I'll give a little intro, and then I'll hand it over to Caleb, and I'll be his hands on the screen. We're needing to set up registries that different providers so that it doesn't all come from a few providers. And I just had an interesting conversation this week around a company from China that wants to be able to also be a part, so that people in China can, without going to Google, be able to use Kubernetes. And so it's not always just about the cost savings. Sometimes it's about making our communities artifacts available to all humans on the planet. So as we look at this, keep in mind what requires is for us to know where people are coming from and where it is best to send them to. And yeah, that's basically it. And at the moment, we'll do some cost stuff later where it would be really good to start using more and not having it just be all the sole burden of Google to share that workload. So we're looking forward to having more members of our cloud native community provide infrastructure. We have a new cloud native credits program that Priyanka launched at KubeCon, if you're not aware of that. And that's beyond, it's kind of encompassing what we do within K8s SIG K8s Infra, but for the rest of the Kubernetes community as well. So at this point, I'll kind of hand it over to Caleb to walk through the kind of background and purpose and design of what we're trying to do with the registry at the current state.
Thank you, Hippie. So this has been something that we've been discussing for a little bit of time, and so the idea of how it should work is matured on the side of what the way that it's implemented and the technologies used and various things around that. And so I believe it will end up being registry.k8s.io if this is the path we end up going down. And I see, I'm just looking at the doc that I wrote up. And so the idea is we have a domain that is registry.k8s.io, and that performs 302 redirects to different container registries, depending on who you are based on your source IP. And that can be, are you inside of a cloud provider? And if you are, then go back to the cloud provider's registry if they're a provided solution. And if you're anyone else, just go to the default. So we can make a few rules around how that will end up working. And so there's been 2 implementations of this in the past that I've put together for the purpose of, this is the technology stack, here's it working in very basic form. Eventually it will end up being based on source IP blocks and ASNs, going back to companies and all kinds of stuff like that. But for now, it's just, is your IP this? Then we'll take you to here. And so to try and get the fastest idea out, here are 2 more options. We have the Envoy WASM and the Nginx NJS, which was inspired by Ricardo's post that he shared to me. Thank you, Ricardo. And so I've made these more extensive and put in some more information about it on each of them. And these are each implementation works if you just go through each code block in a pair instance, pair.sharing.io. But if you want to bring it up yourself using all of this, you'll just need to modify it ever so slightly. But this is a deployment for Artifact Server. Artifact Server was written by Justin Santa Barbara, and I made a modification to it to add some configuration and to make it do more dynamic redirects, because right now it's just to, I think it's cops or something. And so here's it being built and deployed in such a way. And then if you go down to the bottom where there's notes, so this implementation that I've put together it's not the greatest. I can definitely improve it further to make it be more consistent, because it seems to have some bugs in its responses. But one thing I think would be a good benchmark regardless is it performant, and does it seem to do the job at least 50% of the time in the state that it's at the moment. So this is one of the options. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the implementations at any point, so do feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions. So yeah, this is using an existing code base, which is cool. Anno, you have a question?
Yeah, how I can test that? Because basically, I think I went over all your pull requests, but it was basically unclear to me how I can basically test that in some kind of staging environment, or how we can deploy that between different continents.
There's we can walk through it, but for us, we just bring up a pair instance, and then we walk through our walkthroughs and bring it up. And then that actually gives you an ingress to test, like a public HTTPS Kubernetes ingress that goes to the raw hardware on Equinix Metal that runs all of these solutions.
I know, are you more referring about what will it look like if I want to test it in production E, or are you talking about I just want to bring it up to the web kind of thing?
Like basically testing the not production environment, basically set up a periodic job that will just pull an image through the registry you set up, like something like over a month, something that just pull every hour and go through your implementation. I mean, I want basically try to test that, because I want to see how the redirect you implement can solve the current problem we have.
I think that's a good question. The doc right here doesn't have the source code in it directly, but it does have all of the ways to check out the branch and how to put it together. And I've got some manifests for deploying in pair at least. and I'm happy to spend some time with you to bring that up in a different environment, because it's not too much to have to change there. The oh, that's a thing. Yeah, yeah, I can give you a tour of that if that's what you'd like. But then,
Not really. If you have an endpoint up and running, I'm
I
fine
think
with that.
what we can do is we'll go ahead and bring up a pair instance and bring them all up and give you access to that instance so that you can pair it and break it down and do whatever would be great. And we'll get that for you today.
Okay.
And hand it over. And that way, when you need us, we're here, but you can do it asynchronously and feel free to destroy. Or
yeah, we've also got 3 other implementations as well, but I do see that Eddie does have his hand raised.
Okay.
I just, do we have any more thoughts or decisions around how we get the artifacts to these other places? Because when Hippie, you and I spoke, we had talked about maybe having SIG release published to certain places. And then Aaron seemed to prefer the idea of having prow jobs set up to just sync them to different places. So everyone always wants to jump into the tech, and I'm always happy that that happens, but we should definitely figure out the other side of stuff.
Definite parallel thing that needs to happen at the same time. And I think it's kind of up to you and me to hang out a bit to actually do that side, because I know that there's preferences on the way, and I think we just need to go ahead and bring up some prototype prowl job and a prototype parallel instance of a promoter that pushes to 2 places, and just to do it and then point to that it's working, and then because that's how you vote in open sources with just doing it.
Right, but you just jumped right back into the tech, right? So we got to figure out the policies for this, right? So if a cloud provider wants to have this done, do they set up a bucket? Do they provide credentials? Does the CNCF set a bucket under their account that's funded? So that's where I'm thinking.
I think we should add that as a separate area.
I think this is kind of a cap, because I feel like you need to talk about with SIG release about how we can optimize synchronization between the different bucket. Because if I use my hat as a release manager associate, I would say it's gonna be impactful in the release process. So I think I want to be careful and basically see this inside the cap. I know there's an umbrella issue about artifact management, so it will be good to basically see a document express how we basically distribute the binaries or anything related to the release between different cloud providers. Because until now, the release process is only focused on one cloud provider, which is GCP. If you start to basically distribute between a S3 bucket and GCP bucket or a Cloudflare bucket, it's gonna be impactful for the release process. So I think SIG release would be interested to see a document express how we want to impact the release process for the patch releases and or the regular release the 3 regular release per year.
So I had talked to Stephen about this a few times. Stephen definitely wants to see some KEP. The 2 options that, again, we've discussed, and I can't speak for Aaron, but Aaron seemed to favor the idea of having prow jobs that we could set up that would basically make sure that our community-owned bucket is synced to all of the downstream buckets. But again, that begs the question of policy around who owns those buckets. Do the clouds provide credentials? Does the CNCF own those? You know what I mean? So that's what we need to dive into too.
I'm okay with everything, any discussion happening right now, but I want for us to be transparent because this is private one-on-one conversation. So that's why I'm asking for a document that that we can basically present to the community and say, this is what we're gonna do for Cube ADM, for Cube Cuddle, for every binary release every time. So I'm okay
Right.
with all the options we have now, but we need to present this at the community and say, this is our option, and we need to make a technical decision about this.
So I think the important thing is that there's some level of control within the project, that you can turn things off if they go wrong. So you could say it's important that the project has central control of all of, let's call them mirrors, and that it's a cloud provider and they give credentials and the project operates all of those mirrors so that there's centralized control. You could also say we're going to take like the Fedora or Ubuntu or Linux distribution model, and the mirrors are going to operate independently. But then there has to be some sort of central mechanism to say that mirror is malfunctioning in some way, you haven't updated, you're out of sync, it's broken, and we have to have some way to turn it off so that people are not getting a bad mirror. There has to be some centralized way for the project to protect the end users from malfunctioning mirrors, and that's got to be integral to the process.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with that. The problem we have right now is about governance. It's not a technical problem. It's about governance. It's about how we basically deal with the different way we host the artifact. For the record, we use credit donation right now, which means we rely on only one cloud provider until we get funding from the CNCF cloud credit, because until now it's not really official. If I basically want to use another cloud provider except GCP and Amazon, we need to request a credit. So for the moment, we rely on just two cloud providers. If we want to distribute that, we need to talk to the different other cloud providers like Microsoft and say, oh, we need to mirror those binaries inside a region of Microsoft, how we can do that. And we're still in the conversation about this. And I agree with you. The main idea is to replicate what the foundation Apache is doing right now, because they even went to the point they have a central CDN for all the mirrors. So now they use one CDN. They have a contract with Fastly, and they basically now use a CDN for that. I think we can replicate that for us, but we still don't have the full capacity to do that right now.
Yeah,
and we still need to have some conversation about how we basically do the release. We improve the release process.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you run into as soon as you have more than one administrative domain, you have people that are subject to different priorities, right? And okay, it's release day and somebody else has got something more important. There's a fire in their production environment and they're gone for 2 weeks and they don't care what's important to you. And so you have to have some way of dealing with that. Maybe, okay, we don't deploy for their cloud and we have some way of protecting our end users so they're not impacted, they're not stuck because of that. I'm speaking from my day job as we have lots of these international agreements where people run on different schedules. It's just reality, and it will happen.
I agree with you. That's why I kind of want to document that, basically express all the ideas and we get consensus about what we want to do.
Yeah.
For basically
I would just say, make it a statement of principles and just say the number one priority is that we make sure that end users are not impacted by these sort of, I mean, essentially it's a cost optimization, right? So obviously we have to stay within a cost envelope, but we want to make sure that end users are not stuck. That's the number one goal. and then the second goal is to try and optimize the cost and performance, and then operate within that.
Okay. I think we can basically, if we want to be concrete about this, we should come up with some document and discuss about all of this in the document.
In regards to the other implementations, is it valuable to continue running through them in this meeting?
I'm not sure. I think we just have to. This is the main point of the conversation, because the rest I don't see Manasseh in the call, so we can spend some time over this and try to have some conversation about the other implementation. Because I think you add, I think, 2 options for the registry.
That's right. There's the Envoy Go WASM implementation, which is new. And then there's also the Nginx NJS implementation. And each of those have their own ecosystems around them and would have their own benefits to each different implementation. So I'll be happy to share those if that's all good. So as you can see right here, there's the Envoy WASM implementation. I think Envoy is a valuable project, especially also because it's another CNCF project. And so it does what it does very well. And here is a library a module that's imported from Tetrate, who I think no one in the space. And the main logic that is quite cool is down at the bottom here in this checking the headers. So if the header for the remote IP matches a value, then we just change it and rewrite the body and then send you off on a new direction with a 302. And this one's very fast. Like it's pretty fast. And it's also really small once it's compiled. So just compile it into WASM with the command below right there. And that's using TinyGo. And then here's a Envoy configuration, listening on a standard port. And then for this section right here is pretty much saying on any request, that's HTTP. And then the next section is the configuration for WASM. The only really important things here are the code local file names. We're saying we want to use this WASM file. And then we're also passing through some environment variables, and we're also setting one. And then that's the important stuff out of there. So we're pretty much saying to Envoy, hey, run my thing. And by the way, I'll tell you about this information. And so you can run it in Docker like this, or you can run it in Kubernetes like below, build the container image, and then load it in the places without a container registry. That's a hack, don't use that. And then create a namespace, and then bring in that config that we just looked through. And then this is a deployment, giving it 10 replicas, putting on a pretty good security context, and then telling Envoy the IP that we're gonna match against. And then we're also telling it the configuration to pass through. And then we're exposing it with a service, which then goes through to an ingress, which is down beneath, which is the address that I'll be handing out later on. This one, of course, is templated, so that variable comes from pair instances. And there's some notes at the bottom. Good references there. And yeah, I quite like this one. This one seems really good because it's in the ecosystem. Envoy and Go, we in this community, we quite like Go, and Envoy is also another CNCF project. That's pretty good. There wasn't really much. You don't actually need to understand how WASM works. You just need to write Go and understand where things are coming from and where things are going, which is nice. And I don't think there's really any major things you need to change with the Envoy configuration. So that's pretty good there. Again, happy to answer any questions about these implementations at any point. Just raise your hand.
So where's the ASM data come from?
The ASN data will eventually be coming from sources like PyASN and Potaru, and we've used those in a separate thing. If you go
Post on there,
not there, it'll be in the test infra. Is it? No, case.io. Sorry, Kubernetes/case.io. We've used this ASN data from these providers in a different way, which will be quite related if you go view code down there. Right in the center. Yeah.
sorry.
And then if you go to images and then you go to public log ASN matcher, this is how we're currently using the ASN data, and we'll be using it quite similarly when it comes to the redirecting. And there's a whole lot of information about this. If you're interested in that, I can also share a bit about that.
But I'm basically where I was going with is that there's already a full-size table in there.
Sorry, a full-size table where?
A full-size like global ASN table in there that's being looked up against. Yep. Great. Where I was going with that is just if it was being tested against a full-size table for performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have some ideas about implementing things for speed, and in building a production DNS cluster that runs on Kubernetes. In a previous place that I was at, with some others, using some in-memory stuff, which might be quite fun to look at. And then the other implementation is the Nginx NJS one. This one does not contain a lot of code. It's just not a lot, which is that could be favorable. I don't know. This is the Nginx configuration. Some of it is because I like to make things a little bit production-y, so having the things point to temp. But anyway, that's a bit of a detail. We have upstream host that's been rewritten to, and that one comes from the function that's beneath it.
This is the function.
Yep, that's right there. So this function, which is a JavaScript file, it is just checking for what the remote address is. This would be passed through to some library because NJS supports modules like us Webby folks are used to. And so we'll just be able to include some modules that do exactly what we're wanting it to do, and then return the correct host based on the IP after processing a bunch of data. And same thing, you can run it in Docker this way, and you can also run it in Kubernetes this way. It's pretty much the same thing, just a different implementation. And bring it up, that's where it will be accessible from eventually. Here's some good notes. Thank you, Ricardo, for your idea. Woo! And very good. So yeah, if we're wanting to, those are all noises. If we're wanting to do, yes, everyone gets a honk. If we're wanting to do things in JavaScript, then this is the right path for that. So people could be very familiar with it. I'm not sure about how quick it is. I definitely found the WASM one was the fastest out of all of them and seemed to be the most cohesive. But those are my thoughts. But I'm very interested to see which one. Oh, Eddie does JavaScript. Good. Yeah. So happy to hear any thoughts about any of the implementations, and I will be bringing them up very soon and providing URL.
Anybody that would like an instance with all of this set up, just reach out to us and we'll hand you one.
Sounds like a lot of work, guys. Does it? Is this all IPv4? I mean, does anybody care about V6 above the cloud?
I don't think we're doing anything with IP specifically. It's just HTTP stuff.
It's a. This is not far from our mind, Josh, but at this point, we're just trying to figure out where the handles are on this thing. With regards to the definitely like the next iteration is okay. Now where's IPv6? Both with the ingress, like how it hits the reg.k8s.io, where that's running and what we're handed off to. Because I think we just finally got integrated networking that was announced at KubeCon. So give us a moment to breathe. Oh, sorry, I think we're good. Screensaver. But yeah, let's add that to the notes. Thank you.
I was not asking for it. I was just asking. Just to be clear.
No, and I want to put it right up here. Yada yada and IPv6.
Can you do?
I do have a question. So the first option was a pull-through cache, if I remember correctly, and this one is basically some kind of load balancer between the based on the IP address of the origin, or am I missing something? So
I think. Go ahead.
So is it possible? So basically, if I want to run the second option, I just need to have Envoy. Doesn't have to go inside the Kubernetes cluster.
No, you can just use the WASM filter as.
All of the options are just simple web servers, so anywhere that you'd like.
Is it possible to get this also up and running so we can test it?
Yeah, the what? Sorry.
We'll bring up all four.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super easy.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Really a
that's
different
really
URL
what
for
I
each of
want
them
right now.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to make sure you. I think we brought it up last week.
Yeah.
It was a couple weeks.
And we bring it up most weeks.
He brings it up most weeks, and we drop it into the channel, and nobody stepped up to poke around with it yet. So this is. I'm glad. So we'll do that. And invite, because did you post it and then
I don't think so.
Not posting it directly. I think we sent it to Tim and a few others. So if you want access, just raise your hand and let us know, and we'll set you up.
Not really admin access, but basically just one. I mean FQDN, so I can basically set up a pro job that go through.
We'll have you 4 FQDNs, and there's probably a 5th one that needs to be brought up, and that's Tim's idea, where he wrote some Golang from scratch, and he's like, "Look at this! It's super clean and simple." We're like, "All right, we'll add that to the stack." So thank you for allowing us to go into the technical areas of how to hold the packets as they pass through to find out how everybody that gets Kubernetes hits this code. And I've had it on the action. I think it's been a kind of a coordination with me trying to find the right people to coordinate with in the process. I do think a KEP and integrating with SIG release, and I'll take the lead on that. And anybody that wants to help me, please raise your hand and come meet me in the channel or an eye to eye. Thank you, Arnaud, for noticing as your release manager that there's going to be an impact on that process, and that'll allow us to go through and figure out how to get the stuff out to these different providers via the PROW or promoter. And thank you, Josh, for lots of your feedback, and also Ricardo for the implementation of the MJ, the Java stuff. And Arnaud, thank you for hosting us today.
No problem at all. Any question about this?
Just a general comment without having looked at the technical details of it all. I would expect that the tricky part is just getting the fast lookups of matching an IP to the ASN and not issuing the redirects. I mean, redirect is just a redirect, right? It's just say, okay, I just want to, flatten that IP and do the ASN lookup as fast as I possibly can. And that may be something, as was suggested, that maybe, turning it into a DNS service or something else, some sort of backend where I just throw an IP at it and I get a get an answer back
Yeah.
real fast. Maybe abstracting it
Yeah.
away as a simple service might be a clever solution.
It's possible
That's a
to do
good
that,
thought.
but it's a feature in preview inside the GCP. So basically, they can Amazon do that very well with Route 53, but this is very recent in GCP because it's a feature as preview. We can test it, but I'm not sure we can fully test it because what you're saying is the DNS service we look up to for the IP address and redirect based on the location of the IP address.
I've not found anybody that allows us to have it's geolocation based on
Yep,
a database. And so they have this optimization, and that's not necessarily what we're looking for. Because I think in the example of the folks in China, we're going to have the list of, if you're from China, then here's the local providers in China that you can actually reach, because you won't be able to reach the others. Then we may even have to, for them, figure out, like, for the DNS domain, right? But in another area, if it's specific to a provider, then they're going to have a published list of their IP. So it's not necessarily ASN data. That's why this big process for creating the list pulls from lots of data sources, because the public ASN stuff, we're not actually routing packets, we're routing decisions on who's the best. And so there's some logic in there that's not directly delegatable to pre-made solutions like regional DNS, or we're responding for geolocation data from a standard DNS service.
Right. Well, I assume you wouldn't want to be tied to any sort of cloud provider services anyways. I mean, I guess I kind of had made this design assumption in my head without having like read a requirements document or anything, but I sort of made this assumption that this would be designed for like being anycast or something at the top end, so that it wouldn't be tied to anyone's particular infrastructure at the top level. So I guess maybe that's the first question.
Anycast is probably a longer thing. Like, I've got thoughts on that for doing BGP with IPs owned by this, the LF, right? Where we have this type of service, but where this is like a 2 to 5 year goal for conversation starting, because right now the need is that we're spending heaps of money and we need to plug the holes in the ship so that the boat can keep going. Before we start any casting from all the boats.
The other problem with Anycast is we need to own. It's not we need to own. It's the current cloud provider don't really allow Anycast, because I don't think it's something you can do with GCP, and I don't think it's something you can really do with Amazon. I think that's one of the issue. If you basically, I'm not sure. I need to check again.
It would be
Equinix Metal.
Well,
yeah, I know Equinix Metal do that very well, but because we use GCP mainly and Amazon for some tests, it's not really. I don't think they're allowed to do that for most of the Kubernetes cluster.
Right, but you just need it to bounce to like whatever your registry is, right? You should be able to outsource it to whatever is hosting registry. Whatever. It bounces at that level. So you could outsource whoever's hosting just the DNS to point you to the first level of registry. So you get load balance at that level, right? And then you get bounce from there.
We have a whole other section that's all about DNS that we missed.
Oh,
you want to show him?
Oh, I remember the thing. We were because we've talked about DNS before, but
it was the primary.
We're talking about DNS and it goes to a different IP kind of thing, then we need to distribute certs, and then that's a whole nother level of complexity. So I think the reason that we chose redirection is because everybody cares about their own certs, and that just makes everyone feel a lot less pain.
I still have that presentation. Probably was like I guess was my proposal, right? The DNS stuff, yeah. And was like, yeah, maybe using redirects is much easier. Agree.
I think DNS is magical, even though it doesn't work.
I just want to cut on this topic because I feel like there's a lot of good ideas, a lot of conversation. we should basically concentrate that in the document and see how we can better express what we need to do. You can have a document, share it with everyone, and
I will
I'm pretty sure
take
Josh
point
will
on
be
that.
happy to jump on it and basically make better, not better, more detailed proposal. So I
Rihanna, are we
think
going to
next
save any
person-
money?
Yeah, I think the next person was Rian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now the reason why we want to do it for now is to plug the holes in the ship and save some money. So this is just a screenshot of a data studio report that used all the underlying data since April till this month. And interesting enough, the trend is pretty steady. You get the same thing everywhere. You'll see April is a little low for everybody, and October because it's not full months, but the rest of the trend is roughly the same. So basically, just to explain what you're seeing on the screen, the top graph, 100%, that is everybody. That is all the providers together, the amount of gigabytes of traffic. So I didn't go into money, it's just the amount of gigabytes of traffic. Then for those that have not been in any calls where we discussed these trends, is basically the top, if you do an analysis of the providers using the AS and matching up the IPs, you get basically the top 3 users use 51, 39, and 3% roughly of the budget. And the whole of the rest of the community use the other 6%. So it's not a large amount of providers that we have to go to do this redirects. And we can save, depending on trying to keep it as anonymous as possible, we can save somewhere between 40 and 50% of the cost. If we redirect, we keep some within the Google community owned infrastructure that's being funded at the moment for Kubernetes, and the rest, the other bits, we take to the service providers and they do their own hosting. Then we can save the other 2 providers' costs. So assuming it, without assuming who's who, we can just say somewhere between 40 and 50% of cost saving if we can fully redirect. And as we said earlier in the call from Hippie side, money is nice to save, and we do have a problem with using too much at the moment with infrastructure growing and demand growing up, which we do really like, but it's also about access for people that do not have a method to get to our artifacts with the current structure. So get the artifacts out there in the community is also a big part of the game. Any questions on that?
Is there any place we'd rather be spending 50% of our funds?
I think one of the things that we really need to think about is the release artifacts. It's not even in this budget yet. So yeah, that's.
We still have to. We've got more stuff to make sure we give away so people can get on board.
We're not buying ice cream for all the kids yet, so we still need to get there. The other topic is the next one I have is very much an Aaron question. He did a great diagram of the Kubernetes layout. He was talking about needing help at one stage. Cool. He made this. So the question is just, is this okay? Does he still need help? If not, cool. I just wanted to bring it here to discuss with him.
So I made basically I added an issue. So basically what Aaron was still looking for is basically an open source solution to generate this, maintain and generate this diagram. So help is still needed for this. Because he went to
issue link handy, Arnold, and just
it's
throw
in
it
the
in
document.
the agenda.
It's in the agenda. It's already in the agenda.
You already stuck it in there. Thanks.
And I think if we put it in the Zoom chat. So basically, what Aaron is looking for is an open source solution that will help maintain and generate a JPEG or a PNG for this diagram.
We have some stuff that we use inside of org mode and Emacs that uses a similar structure. And I think we talked about looking into it maybe after we get the ingress controller stuff, or the ingresses for these 4 different solutions up. We can give an example of that to see if it's worth pursuing more, because that pipeline is used a lot. I think it's Plant UML. What was the?
We use Graphviz.
Graphviz.
Okay, feel free to ping Aaron directly, or drop something in the issue I post to say how we can improve the maintenance process for this diagram, because I think it's still incomplete on some aspect, and we may have to update that in, I think, 6 months or in October of next year.
I think that's everything from II's side of things. I'll yield the floor back to Arnaud.
Okay, I have like a last question for last request for your EP. So I think I saw an issue where you were requesting basically an Equinix Metal account, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Is it possible to add the SIG, the K8s Infra leads mailing list as admin?
Absolutely. I need to. Okay. I can do that. We'll do that at the same time as we do this other stuff. And can we target the? I don't know. Is there a way to change the infrastructure it comes up on for this to be this project? Because we could just leave it up. So our pair instance. Can we target the pair instance for this other project?
Maybe.
Yeah, we'll look into it, but we'll give you some URLs and we'll make sure. And I'll make sure we get added. I think it's via email address. So if you go ahead and send me your packet username, which is usually an email, and then I will get them to add the chairs of the SIG K8s Infra to that.
Okay, so you can add a mailing
Absolutely
list or something. Okay, so
I don't think I can do a mailing list, right? Because it's okay. Credentials, it's logging in. So if we want to do that style, I don't think we should do that style, because we need accountability for who held that token to get in, right? And the thing about with Equinix is there is no privileges. You either have full access or no access.
Okay. So I think
it's not something we can delegate out too widely.
Okay, so I will create an Equinix account.
Yep. Send me the email for your Equinix account. I will make sure that you're admin on there. And also it's Aaron, right? Is the other chair, co-chair?
Aaron and Dims.
All right, let's make sure Aaron and Dims are also on there, and we'll bring up those URLs for ingress.
Okay.
Woo.
Okay. I think it's time. Any last question? Yeah.
I was excited to see Josh and Tom show up in addition to our regulars. Please do feel free to connect with us. It's this relationship and community. It's not just a meeting.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet everyone.
Okay.
It would be great for me as a new guy if I could schedule like an hour a week as sort of a co-work with somebody to work on some new project. I don't particularly care what, but like an open Zoom session or something where we just work on something of your interest. I would find that very helpful to kind of help me get centered and kind of learn the lay of the land.
Okay,
and it's something.
I want to say yes, but I'm not sure. That's my problem with my.
I'll say yes, because this is the culture at II, right? You're an I, I'm an I, and II is pairing, and pair.sharing.io is where we get together and share our eyes on the open things of the world. And we have all the stuff we're setting up. So if you want to, you can pair with Caleb as he's setting up this thing. I mean, what a better way to see the things
Sure.
than to see the things come up that are the impact of this meeting. And if we do that every week, then you can come back and report on what you saw.
Absolutely. Like I said, it doesn't even really particularly matter what. It's just to get started somewhere. I'm totally happy.
Absolutely. Let's connect on Slack and we'll go from there.
Great.
Okay. See you, everyone. Have a good weekend, and see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.
Thanks,
Look forward to seeing you,
everybody.
Josh.
Everyone.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.